Hello and welcome to PMC English. This is Ayushi Farasi and welcome back to our series of Unplugged with Masters. In this episode of Unplugged with Master, we have Anurag from Hyderabad, who is setting up records by doing summits or mountaineering expeditions without the supplement oxygen. He's making our nation proud and he's making all of us proud by these summits. So without any further delay, let's welcome Anurag in this episode of Unplugged with Masters and let us get to know about his life journey and why he switched from a software engineering background to a mountaineer. So let's welcome Anurag in this episode of Unplugged with Masters. Welcome to PMC English, Anurag.
Yeah.
Firstly, congratulations for becoming the first Indian to do these expeditions twice without supplemental oxygens.
Thank you.
So Anurag, starting with, I want to understand that what made you start this mountaineering expeditions, because by profession you are a software engineer. So why did you shift from a software engineering background to a mountaineering? Like, was it your passion or you gradually built that?
First of all, thank you for inviting me here. And to start with, I never thought I will be getting into mountaineering. It was never in my radar, or I never planned for it. And all my life in India, I've never hiked or was in the mountains because I'm from Hyderabad. And I moved to US in 2015, and my first backpacking experience happened in 2018. Very randomly, by one of my cousin invited me, so I went and joined in the trip. So I liked the experience of it, so I wanted to do more. So I started doing just like weekend trips. But then when pandemic happened, I flew from Michigan, where I was located, to California for snowboarding. And it's a long story, but then to short it up, there was a winter storm and I couldn't snowboard. So I was looking for any like Airbnb or hip camp to stay and then fly back to Michigan. So I came across this sanctuary where I went and stayed for a weekend, and the very first lockdown happened. So I couldn't fly back to Michigan, so I was stuck basically in California. I had my work laptop with me, luckily, so I was like working from the sanctuary and then also helping out in the sanctuary around and then exploring California and around. So my plan before that was to go to Nepal and backpack just like basic base camp trek, because I was still not into climbing at the time. But I couldn't fly again because of pandemic, but because of that, I took a vacation from work and went to Colorado for a month and hiked the entire state of Colorado. It's like 500 miles. It took me 30 days. I was hiking every day. So it's still a regular backpacking, nothing climbing, but go from little high mountains. But after that experience, I want to do something more challenging, because before starting Colorado Trail, I didn't even think I could finish it because how long it is and how challenging it was. So I went to Oregon and just to get into climbing. So I was living in my car at the rest stops and working from coffee shops and going to meet people and start climbing with them. So that's when I started first basic climbing of mountains. So my climbing partner who I met in Oregon, he's 52 years old, Romanian guy. He was very motivating, and then his family used to live in Arizona. So he used to spend more time with me because I was single and his family was not there. So we used to climb more and discuss more about mountains and everything. So at one day he said climbing Denali was his passion. But then because how expensive it is, it's like 12,000 USD to climb with a guide. It's so expensive to climb one mountain, and he has a family, so he couldn't afford everything. So we were discussing one day, we were like, why can't we just go climb by ourselves without guide? So we'll get down the expenses down. So we started planning logistics for that, and so we trained for 6 months in Oregon and Washington. Every week, every weekend, we were in the mountains, climbing with 50, 60 pounds of backpack, doing laps up and down. That was our, for 6 months, nothing, no family, no friends, nothing. So we went finally in 2021, May, we went to Alaska. So Denali is very, not super technical, especially the standard route, but then the weather gets super bad. So you have to plan for 3 to 4 weeks So we planned for like 18 to 20 days worth of food, because whatever we carry, we have to self-survive with it. So we planned for it, but then everybody within our team, we were like super motivated, we were pushing. We finished in 10 days, base camp to base camp. Finished 1 week faster than we thought. And it was very motivating for me and others, like, especially after that trip, I was like, okay, a little bit more self-confidence and boost up. Okay, I could pull this off, then I want to do something more challenging. So it was in July, so I went to Colorado. So my climbing partner's friend, who he always talks about, like Gina, she's from Romania too. She climbs in Nepal, that's what he says, and that's what interested me. Okay, Nepal is something, I need to look it up and then go and see what I can climb there. And then as a kid growing up, always as a fan of Lord Shiva, I have always connected to, like, Himalayas and having that in mind, but never thought like me going there like personally and then even experience that sort of feeling. But so I went to Colorado and trained for 45 days for altitude, and every day I used to wake up at like 4 a.m. I start work at 4 a.m. Sometimes even early. I go climb a mountain, sometimes take a work call on top of the mountain and run down, start working. Because I work in the Eastern time zone, I finish like 4 a.m. to mid-noon, and then go climb rest of the day for training. So that's how I started training for like 45 days. And then from the training of Denali, what I've experienced is I can carry heavy loads, because I was carrying and pulling the sled for like 118 pounds on Denali approximately. So to climb in Nepal, it's very expensive, permits, logistics, and it's a 30 to 40 days expedition, sometimes even more. So it's very expensive and time consuming. So to climb a mountain, it takes anywhere between 15 to 20 grand each mountain, at 15 to 20,000 USD. So, and I just came back from Denali, so I financially I'm like not that struggling and everything. So I've decided to do it myself, because usually in the full package everybody has a Sherpa. I'm like, I can carry my own weight because of my training. I have that confidence. So I thought of not taking any support, just go by myself. So by doing that, I cut down 50% of my cost. And then the reason I choose not to use oxygen is because I've climbed Denali and I felt fine, but it's just a 6,000 meter peak, not like 8,000 meters in Nepal. But my whole point is like, inspiration came from a book called No Shortcuts to Top by Ed Wiesters. He's from North America and he climbed all 14 8,000 meter peaks without oxygen. So there are few points to consider from that book. One is like to experience the dead zone as is. That's how you actually experience the 8,000 meters. And then second point is there might be a malfunctions in the oxygen cylinder, like with the mask not working and everything. There were scenarios happen too. I was doing Colorado Trail, or when I started doing initially into the expeditions, I've realized there is some kind of lack of representation too, because what I see mostly on the trail, or what I experienced, was just another white person doing their own usual, which they are used to from their childhood. So that one point which kind of like made me think like why is that there are not many people who are like me, who I can relate, like who came from a different background where there is no accessibility for like or no exposure. So that's the reason for me to be more active on social media, and then be more vocal about what I do, because even if it motivates or inspires very few people, because what you see is what shapes a perception of the people. People who can relate to me, and they also feel like they belong outside, so they can do this too. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. So that's one of the major reasons for me to do this, to push the boundaries and barriers, to be outside more, to inspire or motivate others.
So Anurag, now that you have told us about your expeditions, how did the journey begin? So I just want to know over here is that what was the reason, or what was your thought process behind doing these summits without the supplement oxygen?
So initially, before going to Manaslu, which I've climbed in September 2021, I was training in Colorado for altitude to get used to the altitude. So my thought process was just to attempt it. I'm not sure if I can pull it off, but after coming from Denali, like even Camp 2 in Manaslu is higher than Denali. So even if I make it to Camp 2, it's a win-win for me. So that's how my whole thought process. Even summit is a added bonus. That was never in my mind, I need to make it to the summit. So I was like, okay, I'll attempt without oxygen, because from the book I read, No Shortcuts to Top by Ed Wiesters, it really inspired me to at least attempt without using oxygen. What happens next is a different story, but one reason is to see how my body feels and to experience the dead zone as is. And the second thing is carrying oxygen, it's still a weight, and every weight counts in dead zone, especially when I don't have a Sherpa to carry everything. So for me, it's like cutting down the weight, be more efficient. And also there might be sometimes malfunctions of the oxygen cylinders. So I don't want to take that risk, what if kind of risk. So that's a whole process, thought process I was going through, and I didn't tell anybody before, even my best friends, my parents, I didn't tell anybody I was going to attempt without oxygen, because people obviously, even though how close they are, they'll always talk it through, play it safe, I didn't want to risk, and then all sorts of things. So I didn't want to hear kind of negative thoughts, and I didn't tell them anybody what I'm going to climb either. I was like, I'll go to Nepal, whatever is in the season, I'll attempt, that's it. So I went to Manaslu. I felt fine without Sherpa and without oxygen. Overall experience, it was challenging for sure. And especially on my summit day, I had some hallucinations and then seeing things which are not there. I saw a dead body in front of me. A person died. He's from Canada. I saw him before the base camp. So seeing all those things, it was very more than physical. It was very emotional and mental, especially by being alone on the mountain, not having people to talk it through. After summit, I've literally came back to Camp 4 and cried myself, and I've spent extra day over there just so because my body was gave up emotionally. We don't want to come down to base camp even I've summited it. So going through, it's for sure, like you mentioned, it's more difficult than the typical traditional way. But for me, that's more challenging, and that's why I want to and also there are so many, even the Himalayas are in Asia, like India, Nepal, and Pakistan, but not many people from India, they're climbers, but then not many people climb without oxygen and push the limits, and then they're all you see most of the time is the Western climbers doing this and that. So I want to do attempt, and then if I'm able to do, I want to be even we are capable of doing it, and we can do this too, kind of. So that's what keep me going, and so far I've climbed 2 successfully. Hope I have more to go, but we'll see how it goes.
So Anurag, what were the obstacles that you had to overcome? Because at such summits, people get stuck, and at times they don't even survive. So what were the obstacles that you had to face and you had to overcome all through this journey?
So Dhaulagiri was a little bit different experience from Manaslu. Apart from, of course, it's a little bit higher, but it's a little more technical than Manaslu. Apart from those things, me coming from actually in January, while I was training in US, I was attempting a winter ascent of Mount Rainier in Washington. I had an injury. I fell and I dislocated and fractured my right shoulder. So my whole training changed after that. So I have only 2 months from January to March. March is my expedition time. I wasn't sure if I could come and climb. So I have to get used to the new lifestyle, new training, and then I was going through physical therapy, and my plan was to go to Colorado again to get altitude training, but because of my physical therapy, I couldn't go to Colorado. I was getting my physical therapy in Oregon. So I was doing altitude training in the altitude chamber, which stimulates altitude. Still not 100% like the actual outside mountain, but still what you can. So coming out of that injury, like even now my shoulder is not 100%, like, I can't move how I supposed to move. So coming out of that injury, I have so many doubts just by myself. Like, can I do it? Or like, what if I get injured again? Because it's only 2 months old. So I have all these things going on. So I flew to Dhaulagiri, like Nepal, with all these things going on in my mind. And when I flew to Nepal, I got food poison. So I got twice food poison, once on the mountain and before. And I got super weak. Like, I lost so much weight, more than like what's a expedition style. So even one day before the summit, I was throwing up and then, food poisoning. So all these things they made me even more doubtful, like, can I do only, like, next day is your summit push, and can I do it or not, especially when you're even weaker, especially without oxygen. So doubting myself, and my expedition leader also wasn't so confident about me because I was the only one attempting without oxygen. And he was like, always, we have extra oxygen and you can use it, you don't even have to pay for it. So he was always pushing me on it. Like, I understand from his perspective, because he just have to make sure his expedition runs fine, and then because of one person, he don't want to change his whole plan for the team. So all these things made me even more, like, a little bit backstep and like everything. But on the summit day, I just, like, left early than everyone, because obviously without oxygen I'll be slower. So I just was like, I'll just go out there, try my best what I can. If not, I'll just come down. Even there was extra oxygen, I didn't want to use it. I just want to come down. So that's how I was there. But slow and steady, I've made it to the summit and safely back down. But on summit day, few things didn't go as planned as well. Right before the summit ridge line, I wanted to take something from my backpack, and then I was struggling because my watch was hanging into it and everything. So I pulled it with force, and then it fell down and slided down the mountain. So I didn't have my backpack. But then coming down from the summit, I wanted to see how my fingers were because they were a little cold. So I removed my glove, and my glove flew off. So my fingers were exposed, and that's why I got a frostbite for like 3 fingers. So immediately I came to base camp. It was 24-hour day. I started at 12:30 a.m. from camp 3, made it to summit, and came back to base camp at almost 11:40 or 12 a.m. Long day, but overall still made it safe. So all these things from this experience on Dhaulagiri made me more, like, be more cautious of things and how I plan, and also like going through injury and coming back with frostbite and then food poisoning and everything, and also made me think of like more, even though how cautious you are, things can always go wrong, like because I'm very with what I eat, I'm very cautious, but then I don't know where it went wrong. So more things to like work on for the next time, and then also all these challenges only is going to makes me more stronger mentally. That's how I see it.
Knowing about your journey, it's like quite thrilling as well. It's quite scary as well. So I just want to know over here and understand the whole procedure. Like, how do you start your journey, like from the base camp, and how does the procedure go on? How do you climb? How many days does it take? What kind of food do you eat? So everything about your expedition.
Especially in Nepal, the whole expedition is different than like Denali or any other mountain. Because it may take anywhere between 30 to 40 days, or sometimes less too, depends on how well you're acclimatized. So during our acclimatization period, we go to high camps. So from base camp, usually base camp is at 4,700 meters around. So you still have another 3 to 4,000 meters to go. So there are 3 to 4 camps in between. So during your rotations, you go to camp 1, sleep, Some people come down, but some people go to camp 2, sleep, come down. So you basically do this because you want to, it's like you have to hike higher and then come back, sleep lower. So that's how your body get used to the altitude. So just get to the higher altitude, give your body that, like, more produce more red blood cells, and so you come down. So that's how the acclimatization process happens. So everybody's body is different. Some people get used in 1-2 weeks, some people take 1 month. So that's why it depends from person to person. And also everybody, or people who use oxygen, go to camp 2. Usually that's the norm, because they start using oxygen either from camp 2 or camp 3. So they do 1 rotation mostly, or 2, and come down and rest and wait for the summit window. But for me, because of not using oxygen, I like to sleep as much as higher as I can. On Manaslu, I slept at camp 3 for 48 hours. I literally slept in tent. I didn't even come outside. I was reading book, just laying down for 48 hours. It's at 6,700 meters. And on Dhaulagiri, I did the same too. Everybody in the expedition did 1 rotation and resting at the base camp. So I did 2 rotations. I went alone and then slept at camp 2, went a little higher, stayed for 1 or 2 hours, have my breakfast or lunch, and then come down to base camp. That's usually the process. The food is as again, I'm doing it by myself. I pack all my own food. So prior to expedition, I've for each meal I've count calories, and then each day I've count 3,000 to 3,500 calories, and then I pack it in a separate bag, like nuts, nut butter, everything, all kind of snacks, with fat, protein. I'll do all that things. And then at high altitude, usually your body don't want to eat. That's how it is. But then you have to eat, because if you don't eat, you'll get a headache, and then you'll get altitude sickness, all sorts of things. So I'll make sure no matter what, I have to finish the whole whatever I pack the whole day. Usually that happens most of the times, but sometimes my body gave up, especially when you're going to food poisoning and everything. You cannot eat anything. So that's usually my food thing. So it takes, on Manaslu, it took me 20 days, base camp to base camp, because rotations and everything. On Dhaulagiri, it was a little faster. We had a good weather, and then nicer conditions, and I was feeling fine. So 14 days base camp to base camp, a little faster than last time, which I'm very happy. Because after Manaslu for 6 months, I didn't do any other high altitude or much in the mountains either, because of my shoulder injury too. So overall, I'm fine. I'm very happy with how it worked out. Maybe it will be same for the next future ones too. But yeah, that's not the usual too. It takes, right now, my friends are in Annapurna. I think they just summited last night. It took them a month because of weather and everything. Or sometimes even longer too.
So is it like you do this expeditions individually or with a group of people? So how does it go?
So usually, even without not taking a Sherpa support or anything, I'll still join another team, because you have to take a permit, and if you take an individual permit, it costs you more. So if you join another group, because you take the base camp support, so all the logistics they give you at the base camp and the food at the base camp. Because you stay a month or so at the base camp, you at least need some good food, because they have a chef and everything, some fresh food. So that's a little bit still not so my style. I would eventually like to not take the base camp support too. But so far I'm okay with taking a base camp support, because fresh food having for a month at the base camp is you need to recover by eating good food. So eating same food in the high camp and the base camp, your mind and body, everything will be tired. And for the recovery too, I need some fresh food. So yeah, definitely join a team for various reasons: for permits, cost effective, and then have the fresh food.
Anurag, now that we are talking about food, So you are a vegan. So what made you change, or what was that trigger point in your life that made you turn from a high time meat eater to a vegan?
So it's been 2+ years I've been vegan. Very happy with how it's going, and then I've never even thought about like going back or anything. And I used to be a very hardcore meat eater. Like I used to eat meat every meal, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I never thought I could even turn a vegetarian. I used to make fun of my coworkers who are vegetarian, like how can you even eat vegetarian kind of stuff. But it happened overnight. I used to live with my coworkers' family in Michigan. So they were expecting a baby, and one night we went to the hospital. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. Me and my friend, we were in the hospital, and we were talking. He turned vegetarian 6 months before that, and me and him always talks about food, health, and he's very health conscious and everything. But I don't know what sparked. At one point, like I just said, like I want to be vegan, like in the hospital. It was November 2nd, a day after World Vegan Day, I think. So, and he said he want to be vegan too, and it started in the hospital, and I stayed like couple days with them in the hospital. We ate meals from the hospital as a vegan, and never looked back. So I never even, because I used to cook a lot. I used to take for my coworkers like meat and everything. So I used to enjoy cooking and then everything too, but I never even like felt like I'm missing something. Especially even now, I cook all my meals. I try to be healthy, and then I try to intermittent fast as well. But then immediately after I became vegan, I ended up in the animal sanctuary, which I told earlier. So I didn't plan any of that too. So we ended up there. I felt like it's some kind of like universe call or something. And that sanctuary is all like rescued or adopted animals. So I spend more time, like it's been two plus years. That's still my home base. So I'm very more connected. And after that, because when I started being vegan, I never thought like, I'll try or for 6 months, or like how usually like, all my friends say. I was just like, started, and it's a lifestyle now. So I feel more healthier, and also for the environment conscious too. I feel happy like cutting down whatever my footprint in the global scale, even it's very tiny. But and also during my training, like what I noticed is like my body recovers like way faster. Like my muscle recovery is faster. I never felt tired, like even though how much I eat it, like I always feel lighter like as a body. And then it helps even in these expeditions, like having more plant-based like for the recovery process and everything. And because of the intermittent fasting too, I like plan everything ahead, like it helps for the training, and also like I don't have to cook one extra meal. So I can spend more time training. So everything kind of like combinedly works for me.
So lovely to know about your transformation, because here in PSSM as well, we encourage people to be vegetarians, to be animal compassionate. So good to know about your journey.
That's good, you guys are doing it.
Anurag, now that we are talking about expeditions, your summits, and how does all of this go through, here I want to know one of your hardest and one of your rewarding part of journeys, like one of your most difficult phases during this expeditions, and one of your happiest moments during this journey.
It's a tough question, because every mountain definitely like teaches me or taught me a lot from the experience. I like to learn from every experience and like grow from it, from my mistakes, and then analyze after every expedition what went right, what went wrong. On Denali that was my first kind of little bit more challenging, was like after we summited on Denali, because we finished it faster, and then we never planned to come down faster either. But there was a bad weather coming in, so if you can't come to base camp, you literally get stuck on the mountain, because you have to fly in helicopter or a small flight into the base camp. if the weather is bad, even if you're at base camp, the flights won't come, and sometimes people get stuck for a week. And after you're summiting, sitting at the base camp for a week is like, it's no fun. Although you're surrounded by mountains, it's still like, your expedition is done and you have nothing to do. So we were literally, like after our summit, we are literally pushing ourselves to like, make it to base camp. It was like 16 or 18 hours. We were non-stop hiking coming down, and it was a whiteout conditions. Like I literally can't see. We were roped up like 3 people, me and other 2 climbers. I literally can't see like the people who is in front of me, kind of. So, and I lost my snowshoes while walking, and I didn't even realize. So that's how tired I was. And I could have been, we did some like mistakes which we talked on, like my climbing partners didn't have like that patience, or I was tired, and then we did some like reckless moves and like everything. But later, like I said, like learning from that experience, and it could have gone really bad. Like any of us could be in a crevasse or like situation. And that's one thing. And then on Manaslu, like after summit, like I said, after seeing that person who has died, and then I was crying, and then next day my body was weak because I spent 2 nights at Camp 4, which is at 7,400 meters. I didn't plan for it, so, and I didn't have extra food or water, so my body was even weaker than it's supposed to be. So coming down the mountain was like, took me whole day too. I was struggling, and then so that day too, like it could have, because most of the incidents in these big mountains happens while coming down for various reasons, because your motivation is halfway down. You made it to summit, and people will be like not so focused or driven, and your body will be tired. So that day too, I felt some difficulties coming down. Could have gone wrong things, but then luckily I'm still here. Even the challenges on Dhaulagiri Light, losing a backpack or a glove, or coming out of with a frostbite, like all these things definitely like teach you something, and then points to consider, like what you could take away from it, like because of these things, you struggle, but then for me, the more challenging and struggles, I always come out more stronger. I see like things like this, like make me physically and like mentally more stronger. Like how can I work this through? Like you will see a dead body in the dead zone, because all this mountain there are so many people who have died, unfortunately. But then you'll come across situations like this, but then how can you be still mentally stronger and then still keep climbing? Because as a human being, like if you see somebody's body like just laying down, obviously you'll go through some kind of emotional and like mental challenges. But then how do I work it through? All these things kind of like teach me something, and hopefully I don't see any more bodies, but then just how to be stronger from this experience is all what I like. Even now I might lose like some parts of my fingers, but just have to wait and see how much I will lose. Yesterday I was in hospital, and then my father was like very upset, and then will you stop at least now, after this thing? And I was like, no, I'm not worried about like losing my fingers or anything. I'm only thinking of my next expedition, which is in October already. But like for me, like even losing fingers is like shouldn't be a showstopper, because especially for me, like I said earlier, pushing the boundaries or barriers and like doing it, like I have like personally see it like a bigger motivation. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I'll be doing. Like no matter what, I'll be still doing.
So lovely to know about your thought process, that you have such a positive kind of mindset, that all the negatives also you turn in a very positive manner, thinking about the outcome, thinking about the future, and lovely to know about you, Anurag. So Anurag, what is that one thing that you learned from mountaineering that absolutely transformed your life?
Not just mountaineering, but in general, like being outdoors, right? For me, what like one main thing is like people, like even on the Colorado Trail or like sometimes I take other people's for their like, you know, first backpacking experience and like giving it back, sharing what I learned and then what I came across, you know. That's the least I can do by sharing my experience. So it's always the people, like being in Nepal, I meet like so many professional climbers, and then even in Colorado Trail I met people from 17 years age to 60 years of age. So by meeting people of different backgrounds, different cultures, and then coming from various experiences, right, I learned something from everybody. Doesn't have to be like, you know, use it in my climbing expedition or not. So that's the reason I'm still like, you know, even expeditions sometimes don't go well because of various reasons, but even that, like just being in the base camp with the people like makes me happy after like these couple expeditions. That's what I've learned, like meeting people is my favorite thing, like learning about them, about their background, their experience. And then I meet, especially in Dhaulagiri, I met like, you know, doctors from like Macedonia, and then climber, the very old like original like climber from like, you know, US, and then different parts of the countries or everywhere. So that makes me more happier to see like, you know, people even irrespective of their age or background or everything, they are still like, you know, be out there, push their limits and then do their best. And then that's what really makes me happy and like look forward to meet people.
Do you practice any spiritual like meditation or something to keep your mind calm?
I don't like 100% or like make it as a daily habit, but it's definitely one of the thing I'll like want to be more disciplined to learn more and get into more meditation. But how I see is like just being in the mountains is like a like meditation for me to like, I don't like sit for an hour or 30 minutes to do meditation, which I would love to. Eventually I need to get into that discipline to practice, but so far I haven't done, but in future definitely, yeah.
So lastly, Anurag, winding up this episode, I want you to give a strong message to all the audience watching this episode.
I don't know if I'm capable of giving any message or anything, but one thing I strongly believe is that whatever it may be in life, if you strongly like, you know, pursue it, like, you know, you just have to put in your work, and then no matter what the people around you, your family, or what they say, because people always talk from their experiences, you know. People who hasn't climbed, or doesn't have to be a mountain, people climb mountain every day in their life. Everybody has their own mountains to climb, but then coming from their own experiences, people always talk, you know, what they have experienced, what they have in their whole life, kind of thing. So what you believe is like, you know, if you seek it, just go after it, like whatever it is, work hard and go after it. That's what I say.
So lovely to have you here in our studio today. It was wonderful knowing about your journey, and it's quite inspiring that how, irrespective of the obstacles, all that you go through, you still look forward with a positive mindset of doing more summit by encouraging more people, inspiring more people. So we just wish you luck, and we hope that you do more and more summits in the coming days and you make our nation more proud. So thank you so much for joining in this episode of Unplugged with Masters.
Thank you for having me here.
So well viewers, today we were in conversation with Anurag, and I hope that the way he's setting up records by doing all these summits without the supplement oxygen. Anurag is the one who has done Dhaulagiri and Mansalu and other expeditions without the supplement oxygen. So he is just inspiring us that if you have that kind of positive mindset, and if you have that gist in you that you want to do something like this, then it's all in you and it begins with you. I just hope that Anurag's life journey and the way Anurag carry forwards his life with that positive mindset and with that enthusiasm would inspire all of you. So with this is Ayushi Farasi signing off. Stay tuned to PMC English for more updates.